Hey guys! So, in this chapter, we read about a lot of different tests that students can take or take because of different reasons. So, one of the ones that we talked about or read about, was diagnostic tests. And basically, these tests are administered to students um, to check like activities of daily living, make sure that they are on target with their age, that they're achieving the same achievements as their peers. So I kind of already knew that teachers, would make observations of their students, especially like in preschool. They would take observations of their students, and then relay those observations back to the parents, so that the parents can make a decision whether they want to get their child tested or not. So I thought it was kind of cool, like reading about how them the students can actually be tested in preschool for like delays versus getting tested when they're older, like at 5 or so. I didn't know that there was actually like a formal test that they have to take or could be taken. I thought it was more like an observational basis when it came to a diagnostic test in preschool. Like, so yeah, such young ages, I thought it was more like a diagnostic observational test versus like a formal test. So that was really cool to learn about. In the chapter, it talked about the Adaptive Behavior Scale, School Second Edition, which is a test that is from ages 3 to 16. It assesses students um, and it looks for intellectual disabilities, um, mostly during childhood, to be measured learning potential. So I thought that was cool too, because it takes the time to not only, so the diagnostic tests take the time to not only pay attention to what they know or what they should know, but also takes the time to look at like what their potential in knowing is. Because I think that's a big thing, because you may or may not know a lot, but your potential tells a lot of what you can learn. The next test that we talked about was achievement tests. Basically, these tests are used to assess if the student has mastered the skills that you have taught them. So, like when I was in high school, an achievement test would be like a math test or like a reading test. Um, and it was kind of like you pass or fail, you get what you get. Um, but reading the chapter, it talked about how like teachers will use these types of tests, achievement tests, to determine what their next lesson is going to be. And I thought that that was really cool, because when I was in high school, they never did that. It was kind of like if the whole class failed, the whole class failed. And they never like used that information to go back and say, hey, like I need to reteach this to my students. They don't understand something. So I thought that that was really cool. It kind of pushed me to read a little bit more about like what steps they actually take into creating a new lesson to reteach their students the things that they don't know, and using the information that they got from the achievement test to then cater to the students that were not understanding what they already taught. um, it definitely changed my view on achievement tests, because in high school it just seemed like they were just testing us. It was more like they were teaching us for the test versus teaching us for us to actually know information. So it was cool or really interesting to find that they use these achievement tests to actually make a curriculum or make a lesson to reteach the information that the students were having issues with. So I thought that that was really cool. Um, Another test that we that we learned about in the chapter was language tests, which I think that living in Miami, that's really fitting to talk about, just because we live in a city where we have so many different languages and language barriers that happen often. And as teachers, we're going to have to know how to teach to our students that don't speak a language that we speak. And we're going to have to pinpoint how that language is affecting their learning, and how the language deficit is affecting what they know or what we can teach them. So with but then I was reading, and it said that English and Spanish tests are occasionally offered. English and Spanish tests are offered, but occasionally in other languages. And I thought that was kind of funny because maybe in Miami that's okay that English and Spanish tests are administered and occasionally other languages. But it's kind of weird to see occasionally other languages because what about students that speak French or speak Chinese or Mandarin or something? What happens to them? Do they not get the same accommodations with their tests because it said occasionally other languages? So I thought that that was kind of sad that our school system only occasionally um, has accommodations for students that don't speak English or Spanish. I thought that was kind of sad. So we talked about, or we read about the pre-LAS observation assessment, which is basically a test of oral language ability in another language. It said it was 3 to 16, 3 to kindergarten, and they use that test to determine placement. I'm not 100% sure if they mean like placement in classes, like an inclusive class or ESOL class, or they mean just like in general. Um, so that test is basically used for them to understand what this child knows, what this child can speak, if this child is having difficulty with the language in general. So I think that language tests are really important to talk about, especially because we live in Miami. Um, Something that I found puzzling was the fact that they put so much work into standardized testing, they into building the test, into making sure that the test is fitting, making sure the test completely tests the things that the students should know, um, and yet students still fall through the cracks. Some students are not tested or placed in the correct place. It's just crazy how standardized tests are put through such rigor to make a test that's completely perfect, yet somehow students are still not tested fairly. I think that standardized testing is great when it comes to understanding our students, but sometimes it's kind of hard because, for example, like an achievement test, there are students that are just not good testers, and they may get nervous and they take an achievement test, and now we think, hey, okay, this kid doesn't know the information, and we're going to use that to build a lesson for them. But maybe they do understand it and they just got frustrated with the test, they just got frustrated with the work. So instead, we're like, all right, maybe this kid is not ready for the next grade because of the achievement test that we gave them, but in reality, they actually know the information. So I thought that was kind of crazy that um, students can be sitting in class and learn, but get tested and still do bad. So, anyways, bye guys. Thank you.